start our local edition. I'm Brad Pomerance in Long Beach today, and we are joined by Charlie Parkin. He is the city attorney for Long Beach. And Long Beach, of course, has a wonderful, very accessible airport. I've used it often. But Long Beach, unlike virtually every other airport in the nation, its noise ordinances are handled locally as opposed to the FAA handling those matters. Is that accurate?
That's accurate, Brad. Back in, the city went through about 12 years of litigation from about 1983 to 1995 when we adopted our ordinance. And during that time, the Congress was considering legislation. And that legislation was the Airport Noise and Capacity Act of 1990,
Nice.
ANCA. And during that negotiation, we were back in Washington, and through the help of our legislators, we were grandfathered. Our ordinance was grandfathered in as one of the only slot-controlled airports in the country.
And what does slot-controlled mean?
Means that we control, under our ordinance, we have a minimum of 41 flights for commercial carriers.
And other airports, for example, their local governing body cannot say how many slots they will have or not have. That's handled by the FAA.
That's correct.
Okay, so under the Long Beach system, you every year do an analysis of how much noise is being created at Long Beach Airport. How does that work?
That's correct, Brad. We use a base year, 89-90 as the base year. And so there's calculations are made from certain sensor points adjacent to the airport on the total noise for that category of air carrier. And each year, under our ordinance, it's written so that it encourages the airlines to fly newer, more efficient, quieter jets. And in exchange for that, if there's room in the noise, under the noise bucket, we call it, then we could possibly add provisional slots.
And so as we speak today, there are 41 slots. But this year, for the first time in how long?
This is the first time ever, since 1995.
Since 1995, since this new regime, the noise bucket was not hit.
That's correct.
The ceiling of it.
That's correct.
And what does that mean?
Well, that means each year we have an expert that has been calculating this every year. They'll do a calculation to see how many flights that the airport or additional slots could be made available and still not exceed that noise bucket or the noise capacity.
Sure.
And then we would have a process to make those slots available if there's interest from the airlines.
But do we have a sense, sir, as to why this year? Why was this year the year that when your expert came in, the company found that the noise levels are reported to be well below the allocated noise budget? Well below.
And one of the main reasons for that finding is the phasing out of some of the noisier jets that service our airport. And of course, sometimes it's the mix of when these planes fly in and out of the airport. But for example, some of our carriers at the airport fly the Airbus 320, which is a much quieter plane than the previous generation, such as an MD-80. And we had an MD-80, one of the carriers was using an MD-80, which creates more noise, and the mix is important on calculating the noise bucket.
And so here you are, under Long Beach regulations, you are now required to open up more slots. And your expert indicated, based upon its findings, how many slots must be opened?
9 slots.
9 slots. That's like a 20% jump.
Correct.
In the number of flights that can come in and out of Long Beach Airport. Some may celebrate that, others may be very chagrined about that reality.
You're absolutely right. I think there'll be people on both sides of that and very vocal on both sides. But we believe, and my office certainly recommends, that we comply with our ordinance to protect our ordinance. We believe it's one of the best things and an asset to the city and to the neighbors and the residents.
Well, the fact you have local control. LAX doesn't have local control.
That's right.
Ontario, I don't think,
No, Burbank, none of the airports in the... John Wayne's as an exception. They do have some local control and slot controls, but we are very fortunate.
So what happens now? There are 9 slots open. How do airlines seek to obtain 1 or 9 of those slots?
That's a great question. We've never done it before.
I was going
so
to say.
we've created and we'll be presenting a protocol for rolling those out. The ordinance requires the airport director to determine if there's slots available or room, and then how many. And so in working with the noise expert, they've determined it to be 9.
Right.
And then there'll be an announcement. And so we'll send notice to the carriers. We'll put an ad in the paper so that the public's aware that this process is going on. And then there's an appeal process, and then it would be what we're calling a first come, first serve.
So the appeal would be not on the applications, but should there be 9 slots?
Well, right. Do they disagree with the airport director's decision?
And how would that work? Neighbors can be grumpy, and so you might see an appeal.
Yeah. Oh, you're absolutely right. And so, but it has to be based on credible evidence. And so I think truly they would have to come in and say, your noise expert made a mistake.
I understand.
The math is wrong, and so therefore there's not room for these additional flights.
Okay, so I cut you off. I apologize. So assuming the appeal is brushed aside, let's say, you said first come, first served basis. How does that work?
Well, we don't know what the interest will be for these additional slots. They're called they're provisional slots, and so they would be in for a period of 1 year.
And let me ask you about that, though. If you're not an incumbent, if you're an airline that wants to come into Long Beach Airport, which is a very busy and attractive airport, if you're only going to have 1 year to fly guaranteed, it seems as if it would be an investment not worth making.
That's a good question, and the airlines are going to have to weigh that option. If you are a new airline coming in and you apply, and there is a lottery, say there's more applications than we have the 9 slots available. If they're a new carrier, they would get 2 slots, so that's 2 landings and 2 takeoffs.
Do the economics work under that model?
That's going to be a decision.
It's not your decision, right?
Well, we're following our ordinance and why it was written exactly that way in '95. I'd love to go back and ask those folks.
Right, but you were.
I was here in the city, but
not
working
involved.
on the airport.
Okay, so I do want to get a sense, though. Would an incumbent want there to be more slots? I can envision an argument that could an incumbent, play the system so that noise bucket, its ceiling is just reached to avoid more slots so they can hamper competition.
I guess anything's possible, and the airlines would certainly know. They know our noise ordinance. They know how it's calculated. Everybody knows the rules, and we certainly hope that isn't the case.
Sure.
Our ordinance, I think, is written to encourage them to fly their slots in a most efficient and quiet manner to protect our neighborhoods. And so we're hoping that isn't the case.
I hear you.
Yes.
So do you have a sense, as we speak today, when will the bids go out, the RFPs go out, the lottery notice go out? When does that all happen?
We're working through that process now.
But obviously people know it's happening. You're on this show.
Now.
The airlines know it.
The airlines know. The airlines may know it. It's going to be going to council soon, and then so that everybody knows about it.
Right.
And then we will be determining the process and then sending out the notice, but we're going to try and get on this fairly quickly.
I presume that with 9 more slots, that could be a catalyst for more jobs. Am I accurate?
I think so. It depends. If the incumbents are the only ones interested in it, they may be able to take those slots and use those slots with their existing staff.
Right. But still,
we think it'll be more passengers through the airport, more things happening.
Parking fees, which I'm sure Long Beach appreciates.
Right.
And so when do you expect, if you can say, these new flights to be taking off from Long Beach? Could you have a sense?
I think realistically, it's going to be late summer.
Okay, so this could happen pretty soon.
Yeah, summer or fall would be, by the time we do the slot allocation and they're able to ramp up and get everything in the infrastructure in place to take off.
It's actually interesting. For a lawyer, this is kind of interesting stuff.
This is interesting stuff. You're dealing with history.
I was going to say, his name is Charlie Parkin. He is the city attorney for the city of Long Beach, an elected position in this great city. My name is Brad Pomerance. You are watching Charter Local Edition.